Yeah, my name's Lash-Williams. I graduated with a degree in cultural history and history in 2009, and I'm currently the demand generation marketing leader for NTT Data in North America.
Thank you very much. What made you to decide to study at University of Aberdeen?
Um, Gosh, what made me pick Aberdeen? I guess I was looking for a really good history department, and Aberdeen has a really good history department, so that was important. I wanted to go somewhere that was quite different to where I grew up. So I grew up mostly in the southwest of England, so it wasn't just a choice of going diagonally across the country, but I wanted to go somewhere different. The northeast of Scotland sounded, I don't know, exciting, literary, romantic, um, and yeah, and they accepted me, so that worked as well.
That's perfect. Why did you choose to study history?
Um, I guess I've always enjoyed history, and I did history, English, and theology for A level. So it was sort of a choice of one of those three, and I was most interested in history, and I felt like it gave me kind of most options for the future. I felt like theology might put me down a certain road that kind of wasn't my gig. Literature I wasn't sure about. History I was really fascinated by, particularly the history of science and technology and the Industrial Revolution. And there were some great courses on that in the history department. So yeah, that was the choice.
How did your degree prepare you for your career in marketing?
Yeah, in lots of ways, actually. I think that there's this big debate at the moment, right, whether you should do a humanities degree or a business degree and that kind of stuff. I think um, critical thinking is really important in marketing, right? And analysis. Sometimes it's statistical analysis, and so history is less helpful with that, perhaps. But often it's about analysis of a situation, right? You're looking at a market and a target audience. You're looking at competitively positioning your product, right? So how is everyone else positioned in market, and how can you be positioned in a given category to both be clearly in that category and clearly differentiated within that category. So when I was a product marketer, history was really, really important to that kind of analysis side of things. And I think even now on the demand generation side, when we're looking at even a statistical analysis of a trend or something like that, it interacts with a buyer audience behavior. And history is nothing if not a study of human behavior through the ages. I think also that when I've worked in startups and scale ups, I mean, I did some awesome courses with a lecturer called Ben Marsden in History of Science and Technology. And if you look at whether as a startup you protect your IP very aggressively or not, you can look at the Industrial Revolution. You can look at Bolton and Watt, who built some of the first factory engines commercially in the world. Was protecting their IP, which they did viciously, a very good idea? No, their IP was very protected, and people out innovated them. So again, there's things like that, even in the startup space, where the degree can be literally very useful to think through a challenge or a problem or a question.
Were there any significant projects or research during your academic years that you found particularly impactful or memorable?
I'd love to say my dissertation at the end, but I don't think I got a terribly good mark for that of all the grades I got. I think probably there was a professor called Alan McInnes who did a course on critical questioning. So we had pieces of historical evidence, and instead of analyzing them, we had to work out what the right questions were to ask. It started off quite basic, like who wrote it, what could be their bias, and then it got more nuanced after that. And so I think that's another thing that's always kind of stuck with me is, looking at a situation, what questions should we be asking here? And now that I work often in transformation and change as part of my role, I'm constantly asking myself, what questions should we ask here, right? Is this the right way of doing something? Right? Should we think again about this? And trying to get my team to engage with that as well.
That's very interesting. Thank you. So, did you participate in any clubs or societies while you were a student at University of Aberdeen?
Yeah, I was involved with the University Conservative Association a little bit and did some political campaigns, political work. That was really cool, really interesting. Also in Debater a lot. I really enjoyed Debater. I did a little bit of competing as well as debating um, at Aberdeen. And I think that was one of the most useful things. Sometimes debating can have a bit of a, I don't know, nerdy rep, but when I'm giving a presentation, right, or something like that, the fact that I'm comfortable relatively with some preparation in front of a room is a really, really useful skill to pick up. And I'd say if you're thinking about going into the world of work, right, there's things I can teach you about marketing if you join my team. Confidence is harder to teach. It can be taught, I think, right? And it can be brought out of someone. But if you come with a confidence in a room, or even an ability to feel like you look confident, we can all be like jelly on the inside, right? But then there's other things that can be taught more quickly. So I think that's a really, really good one for people to get involved with. And of course, whatever your political persuasion, I'd suggest student politics is a great thing to get involved with as well.
Absolutely. How did you manage to keep your healthy lifestyle mixing with your academic life and your personal one?
I didn't keep much balance, if I'm honest. I got a 2-1, slightly scraped that. And I spent a lot of time doing the extracurriculars. And I think maybe I would have spent more time focusing on some of the academic side of things, if I'm honest. Like there were some amazing courses on British history and Scottish history that I really I chose because I had a certain number of courses to choose, and I wish now that I really engaged with them. But I was really busy with extracurricular activity, Debater, Students Association, as well as the Conservative Association. But again, I think those extracurricular activities, a lot of those skills are what stood me in good stead later.
Thank you very much.
Did you partake in any jobs or internships like while you were at uni or after university?
I did a mini pupillage with a barrister while I was at uni. I was considering whether I wanted to go into the law, going to be a barrister. That was really interesting. I didn't do too many internships, but I graduated in 2009. And so the last couple of years of uni were quite rough for traineeships and internships. There weren't many in the market at that point. Now though, I work with interns quite often. And I think one of the best things you can do to set up your career, I think it was probably a little bit harder for me at the beginning of my career because I didn't do that. And so if you have the opportunity to do an internship, definitely an internship in marketing. I grab it with both hands, and I wouldn't worry about what your internship is in, right? Like when I look at a CV, I don't mind whether someone's done an internship in my field or another field or something like that. Doing it is a good thing, showing that that you're used to the world of work a little bit, as well as experience in whatever you're going to do that internship on.
Thank you.
What advice do you have for students who are trying to get an internship or having trouble with that?
Yeah, it's hard for everyone, right? So the first thing is if it feels hard for you, right, it's hard for everyone. There are probably more interns than there are internships. And if it feels like that, right, that is no judgment on you. So keep submitting those applications, right? Keep going for it. The other thing I would say is like go to your favorite companies, submit those applications as early as you can, as early as they open. And please know you often hear stories like, well, it's only someone who knows someone who gets an internship or something like that, right? We have a bunch of, in most companies, including my current one, right, rules and regulations that prevent that being the way people get internships. Sometimes people who are related to someone in the company do. There's a whole conflict of interest program, right, in most companies that mean that it has to be a fair playing field. So don't worry if you don't know someone where you really want to intern. If you don't have them in your network, go and submit that application. I would also say, though, building a network is really important. And that's not about someone you know knowing someone. That's about you knowing someone, right? So if there's a bunch of industries or a particular industry where you want to intern, reach out to people on social media. Many hiring managers right now are active on, you guys found, we got in touch on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn or Twitter for many places. Connect with people at conferences, at events, comment on people's feeds, ask for advice, right? Ask people for advice. People are very happy to give advice, and that will help build your network. And all of that could feed into getting an internship. And I'd say also, like with any marketing funnel, fill your funnel full, right? Apply for lots of internships, knowing that it's very competitive, and you'll give yourself the best chance of landing the internship that you want. And then the other thing I do is leverage the University Careers Office, right? The Students Association, right? There's a bunch of people out there at Aberdeen who want to help you succeed. So go up there, knock on the door, and ask for the support.
What do you think that people who are hiring these interns look for the most in the application?
I think something different, interesting would jump off the page, right? So you guys setting up this society, for example, right, and taking that initiative, that's going to be really different. Most people join a society. Some people set a society up. You've set a society up. That looks really interesting. So I think something interesting or different. I think one of my bugbears is I don't like excitingly formatted CVs. This sounds like such a basic thing to say, but your CV is going to go in many companies into a massive, great system. That system is going to read it, and that system is going to archive bits of it, and AI is going to take bits off it. So have a neat CV, but don't make the format of the CV what's exciting. Make it be something about you. And don't worry, like on my first applications, I worked on a steam railway, but that was what I'd done for most of my kind of work experience before I went to uni. And that's what I put on my CV. And people often in interviews be like, can you drive a steam train? I can't really drive a steam train, which is really sad. I can do a bunch of other things on a railway. But that gave them something to talk about, right? Even if it seems weird or quirky, put that different thing on your CV. And then I think when you go for interview, no one is going to mark you down for dressing too smartly, right? So work out what the office dress code looks like, dress a little bit more smartly if in doubt, and just be yourself. Just absolutely be yourself. And usually yourself is quite a cool person. And that's who people want to bring onto your team.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell us more about your career journey and like where you started and like how that worked through your time and where you are now?
Yeah, so I had done some, I guess, little bits of political communications when I was in the Conservative Association. So then I went into PR because that felt natural. And I had a little bit of kind of experience with that. So I moved to London after uni. I went to work in a couple of PR agencies. I found a passion for B2B rather than B2C PR. So my first agency, I spent a few weeks working on a desk that did things like coffee and chocolate. I love coffee and I love chocolate. But I found out that was a personal rather than a professional love. And then there was the other side of the house that had finance companies and consulting firms and that kind of thing. And that to me was really interesting. So I sat on that side of the house. I moved around a couple of PR agencies, and I kept bumping into marketers. I didn't know much about marketing when I left uni, if I'm honest, but I knew what PR was. I kept bumping into marketers, often in pitches. So I'd be pitching, and the person I'd be pitching to was a marketer. And I'd have to be talking to them about their challenges and what they needed done. And so I decided I wanted to go into marketing and to be on that side of the house. And I was also bumping into startups quite a lot. And I was meeting people who worked in startups. It seemed really exciting to start a new company. So I went to work with a bunch of early stage startups. They were universally a disaster. And that's okay. That's fine. Right? That happens. Another thing I would say to anyone is go and work in a startup and watch it fail appallingly and learn some lessons from that. And then eventually I found myself as head of marketing for a small software company. And then from there, I've really been in software or consulting marketing through worked at PwC for a while, company Hydro Constructors now with NTT.
So what is NTT Data?
So NTT Data is it's a $30 billion company globally. It's an IT services company, one of the top 5 in the world, actually. It's just come together through merger, so our brand is quite new as it is today. We are founded by the Japanese telecommunications company, NTT. That's where our heritage is. And we're the outside Japan operations for that company. So it's a very exciting organization. There's a lot of kind of R&D that goes on. So I gather someone told me in my first week that NTT invented the emoji, which is really cool. But yeah. And we're also looking at some of the new technology, photonics technology, that's going to massively reduce the need for energy within the IT space. That is going to be really, really important for reducing the energy footprint of IT. We're one of the largest data center providers in the world. We have some of the largest applications management and development teams in the world. So it was recently announced that here in the US, we're doing a bunch of work on Salesforce for Salesforce, which is quite cool.
That's incredible. Thank you. What are your current responsibilities at the company?
So I'm the demand generation marketing leader for North America. So despite the accent, I've lived in the US on and off for about a decade. I'm American now. And so we're building a demand generation function here. We've had one for some time, one way or another, but we're looking at shaping it for the future. And that role has just started. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it looks. I think one of the important things when you're building a new team and forming a role, right, is to bring no assumptions about what the challenge looks like. And most importantly, we're looking to grow like everyone is, right?
Yes, thank you.
So how do you manage to work in a team and collaborate effectively with other departments in order to achieve your goals and your job well?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think that comes down to relationships. It's another thing that I guess student life and extracurricular life at Aberdeen really helps, right? Just like on the Students' Association, you have a bunch of different sub-bodies, all of whom have to work together towards one goal. Sometimes it might not feel like everyone's working together towards the same goal in that organization. I'm sure it's changed now and everyone is united. But I think it's just about building relationships. One of our leaders said something really powerful at the conference a couple of weeks ago, right? It's about assuming the good in people, right? Just in every interaction, assuming the good in people, building a relationship before you try and work on something challenging with someone. And then constantly reminding yourself and those you work with of why what you're doing is impactful to the organization's goals. And I think that's a really important thing, right? And I think that fosters really great collaboration. And working with awesome people, really lucky here at NTT. And I'm sure most of your interviews say the same, that most companies are full of awesome people, and that makes collaboration pretty much easier.
Thank you very much. And next question is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face in your role, and how do you overcome them?
So I think in any marketing role right now, any marketing leadership role right now, I think the market is feeling a little bit harder for marketers right now. Some of the things that used to work don't work. And that's not necessarily because of the financial markets, but AI is really, really going to start impacting marketing. It has, but exponentially impacting marketing, right? So what's the impact of AI? That's a really, really big one. What's the impact of automation in general? And I think in the enterprise, how does marketing play the part of engaging with the buyer in a really complex sale? I think in the age of digital privacy, as cookies are becoming less and less useful with the rise of AI, there's lots for marketers to consider. And I think we're all exploring it. We're all working it out. I'm lucky to work with an amazing team here, great people. And I think across the enterprise, we're all just working out how we do marketing really well.
Thank you.
All right. So with the field of marketing, I imagine it always changes, as you just mentioned. What are some of the big latest trends, and how has it changed through the years so far?
So I think AI is the big one, right? How do we leverage AI? So if you look at content, right? AI can write a bunch of content. Does it write it well yet? Generally not. Can it make it more efficient? So your humans spend a lot of time putting the last 10% of kind of glitter, of pizzazz onto a piece of content? Probably. And what's AI going to do for me in the demand space? Customer acquisition, right? How's that going to change how we acquire customers? How's that going to change how they move down the marketing funnel? I think that's a big, big question, a big trend at the moment. And I think also data privacy. Data privacy is fantastic. It's amazing. Our data was far too available to far too many people until recently. But with the rise of increasing amounts of data privacy regulations and with the sunsetting of things like cookies, third-party cookies, how do we know what a buyer is looking for in order to give them the best buying experience? Because the negative side of watching people, the kind of spooky bit of marketing, right, was that people felt too watched online, and companies probably had too much of their data. The good side of that is you can give people a great experience because you know what they're looking for, you know what they want, you know what they're interacting with. So as it gets harder and harder for systems to provide that information to you, quite rightly so, how do we as marketers pivot probably to a better understanding of our buyer than just letting the systems give us bits of data that we make assumptions? I think that's a big challenge right now in marketing.
Thank you.
Do you have any advice for students that are struggling with stress? And obviously you were in university and you're working. It's a very, I'm sure it's a very hard and stressful environment. How do you deal with that stress, and what advice do you have for that?
Yeah, it's really hard, and it doesn't necessarily get easier, right? Stress is ever present. I think the first thing is if you're in a moment of stress, you're not going to be making good decisions. So if you're stuck, I used to sit like 2 in the morning and look at an essay, wondering what I should do. What I should have done was gone to bed at midnight and got up at 6 or something, right? But instead, I just pushed through. So I think the first thing is get up, walk away from whatever thing you're doing, and just take a moment. King's College, one of the most beautiful places in the UK. Go take a 5-minute walk around there, go back to the library. Just stop for a second. Go for a run, something like that. The second thing I would say is ask for help. I had to take a break after my first year at uni. My father died during my first year. He was older, so it was obviously very sad, but it wasn't unexpected or shocking. But it was a huge thing for me, of course. And I remember being really scared to go to my tutor's office and knock on the door and say, "Look, I just can't do uni right now. I just need to not be here." But she was, of course, really understanding. Was like, yeah, you absolutely need to not be here. Like, what are you even doing in my office? This could have been an email. Like, go home. You know. So I think ask for help. Ask for help. Ask your friends. Ask your tutors. Ask the uni for help. Um, and I think also maintain that active social life. Right. That's where extracurriculars come in. If something about life is stressing you out, go and do something where you have to focus on something else. Sometimes relaxing doesn't help. Honestly, really, sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes focusing deeply on something else does.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are very sorry for your dad.
No.
And the last question for today is, if you could go back in time, would you change anything about your student experience, or would you give yourself any advice?
I think I got really excited by the extracurricular, and I probably focused less than I should have done on some lectures or some courses when I was really excited by something extracurricular that's happening. I would say don't miss the opportunity that some of the people you're going to read about 15 years later in the newspaper, right? Because they found out some new thing in history or whatever, right? You get to hang out with them like 3 times a week. You can go and ask them about their research. Don't miss that opportunity right now because it doesn't come around again. I think that's the only thing I'd do differently. But even then, I had a great time at Aberdeen. I had some amazing experiences. I made some brilliant friendships. I'm going to a wedding in 2 weeks in Cleveland, Ohio, with one of my mates from Aberdeen, who's one of my groomsmen. Like at the same time, I guess I'd say on the flip side, really enjoy it. Like don't miss enjoying it as well.